Hi, everyone. My name is Nata or Natalia. I'm a customer relationship executive here at Pointerpro, and I'm really excited to talk today about mastering your assessment flow. So I see that some people are joining, so let's give it a couple of minutes for everyone to tune in and be online. So some of you may already know me. I've been in touch recently with customers, getting to know their use cases. But for those who didn't meet with me yet, you can always reach out to me to plan a meeting, to look at your assessment, to see how we can level it up and making sure that you're getting the most out of the platform. But for today's session, I prepared for you a list of features that I would like to share and discuss. And agenda for today will be divided in two parts. So first we will talk about how can you improve the flow and to completion rate of your assessment, because it's very important that it is a seamless experience for your end users, that they enjoy taking assessments that your company creates, because in the end, all the value that they get out of that assessment is directly associated with your brand. So we want to make sure that they have the best experience possible and they come to take more assessments, and in the end, your business grows. And about the second part, we will talk about how can you boost response rate and engagement for your assessment. What are the next steps you can take after your assessment has been completed? And some extra features that will be also interesting to make sure that the completion rate is high. Who is this webinar for? Well, basically everyone who joined me today. So it's for new platform users, so people that just recently signed up with Pointerpro, that they're still undergoing assessment building process and they have their onboarding. But it's also for the long-lasting customers that have been with us already for a while and maybe not using the platform from day-to-day activities and might have not known about certain features or would like to rediscover platform and see how they can level up their assessments. So basically everyone who is in any way works with Pointerpro is very, very welcome today. Okay, so starting with the first part is improving the flow and completion rates. And there is a certain set of features that we will be talking today about, and I'll go about them one by one. So make sure that if you have any questions, you keep them in mind or already send it in the question chat. We can always come back to them. So the first thing I want to talk with you about is about question grouping and question pool. Basically, when you create your assessment, you might want to cover several different topics within your assessment. And in a way, you want to categorize or group questions that are related to the same category. It's always various names people assign to it: groups, blocks, categories, topics. So in essence, it's all the same. Questions are related to the same area that you cover. That is the option that you can find in your assessment builder under extra options. And you will see that always there is like a search setting bar that you can type and see and look for the feature because there is usually a long list. But that one is basically called question grouping and question pool. And when you open that feature, you can create those basic groups that you want to have. And there are also extra toggles available. So first of all is grouping question on the same screen, meaning that you can show questions that are related to the same category on the same screen. And they will be just one after another. Then you can create a question pool. What's the difference between question group and question pool? Question pool is also something related to the same topic, but it's more widely used for when you create a certain quiz. Let's say you create a quiz about geography for students, and you don't want them to have exactly the same questions because it's a test and you want to make sure how is their knowledge. So you would create a question pool, set of questions that go about geography, and then you would set number of questions that should be selected from this pool, and they will be selected randomly, and you can let people answer those questions from the question pool. Moving forward, that's the view that you will have when you start creating a new question block. So you will see that on the top you have a bright orange button, which is our brand color, and all buttons are very visible in our platform. And here on the right-hand side, you can create all the different groups that you have in mind, and then also have extra settings for those groups that you have created. We will look into more detail about those as tips and tricks. As a first tip that I can give you, because I work with the platform from day-to-day life and have many questions from the customers, is I suggest that you first create all the groups that you have in mind that you will be using afterwards. So for example, in my assessment that I have created, I have 3 groups. Those are evaluating the skills of my employees. So I group them by generic skills, technical skills, and the skills for the managers and leaders. So I first create all the groups and I leave them empty at the beginning. And then I start moving my questions and assigning them into groups. By default, all your questions will fall into the first question group. But the best way is to start moving your questions into correct groups from the beginning, from the end, sorry. So meaning you have 10 questions and last 3 questions are the manager questions. So you would first take the last 3 questions, 10, 9, 8, and then move them to question block manager. Then you would go exactly the same way from the end and assign it to the correct group. As such, it's just easier to arrange your questions in the correct group and make sure that there is no mistake. Extra settings for question groups are also available. For example, you can set up a custom background per question group. That is also a very interesting feature because that helps you to re-engage with customers and give them an extra visual hint that they have now switched from one question group to another or that the topic changed. You can also, with a custom background, hint them about which area these questions will be. So it can be either a just simple color that you assign per question group, or it can be a custom image that you can also upload from your own computer that matches with your own brand and internal marketing toolkit. An interesting feature as well is, as I mentioned, grouping questions on the same screen. It basically saves you extra clicks, so people don't need to go through each question one by one, as it makes people feel that your assessment is very, very long because they need to do a lot of clicks. However, if you are using question groups and you put questions from the same group on the screen, it kind of saves them an extra click because all the questions will be listed one under another. They can just answer all those questions, click next, and go to the next group, for example. Yeah. So to show you a little example of how it can potentially look like with features, specifically custom background and grouping questions on the same screen, I took a screenshot from one of the assessments that I've been working on. So this is an example. You see that those are the questions that are related to the same group, and they are grouped on the same screen, so they're just one under another. I can answer those questions, and when my whole group of questions is answered, I'll just click next, and I will go to the next page. And it also looks visually appealing because you have basically less pages for your assessment. So in the progress bar, you also see lower number, which makes you feel that assessment is not taking so much time. So you can just quickly go through it and be done. So it's kind of also convincing trick for your customers that it will not take too much time for them to fill in your assessment. Yeah, good to go. Moving forward, I want to talk about question logic. So when you added all your questions to your assessment, there might be different kind of people that will be taking your assessment, but based on their role or based on their activity, you want to personalize the experience for them. And that's where question logic comes in very handy. It is again available under extra options in your assessment. And some possibilities or the most used options of question logic are skip to question, skip to an end, go to a certain question, or show or hide following answers. This is basically an if-then setup. So if this rule is true, then I want my system to behave in a certain way. So for example, if this person says that they are from Belgium, I want to show them question 2, 3, 4. But if they say that they are from the Netherlands, I want to show them question 5, 6, and 7. And there are different options and different kind of logic pieces that you can assign to this if-then statement. So moving forwards, that's again the screen of how a question logic menu will look for you once you enable it. So you can see that again on the top, you have the orange button to create a rule. And each rule will be if-then statement. So in this case, I am hiding the certain question if the response to another question was certain thing. So here it's very straightforward. Those are like drop downs that you can select from and set up fully custom logic so that your assessment is having customized and personalized flow for every person that is taking it. Moving forwards, I also prepared for you tips and tricks for this section as well. It's always nice, or at least I prefer and suggest, to put on a toggle to enable question logic. As such, then when you look at your assessment later on, you will see which are the rules that are applied for that specific question. So you kind of know that there is extra flow connected to your question logic. And make sure that the questions that you use in then statement always go after the one that is used in the if statement. So that might be a bit tricky to explain, but let me try to do that for you. So I'll go back to the previous slide. When setting up question logic, we always make some kind of trigger, and it can be an answer to the question or a certain field of the customer on the contact level or whatsoever. But if you're using questions or certain responses as the trigger, it is always important that if you refer to question 5 in the if statement, you can only start from using questions from 6 onwards in your then statement, because this question logic rule cannot go backwards. So you cannot say if answer to question 5 is yes, then show question 3, because 3 is going before 5, so it's kind of going backwards, and then system goes kind of in the loop. It is always best to reference a question that goes after in your if statement. Yeah, I already see some questions popping in. I'll make sure to cover those in the Q&A session. So Hannah, stay tuned for answer on your question. Moving forward, style and design. This is also quite an important part when you share an assessment with your customers, because you want them to have pleasant experience, that it looks very beautiful on the screen, because that also influences the response rates. Because if the assessment is beautiful, looks clean, neat, and fully associated with your own brand, people are more likely to take your assessment. So there are different options that are available to style or design your assessment, and they're all available in the Design tab of your assessment. Some of them would be a layout. So there are different layout options that you can choose from, whether it should be centered on the left, on the center, or it should be like a compact view. So usually when you play with those layout options, you can see how it can potentially look like with your assessment. Then, quite important one is logo. You always want to make sure that you upload a good logo for your assessment, and always make sure that you use an image with a transparent background for your logo, as such that when you apply certain background color or a background image, your logo will look seamless. And yeah, I would invite you to test it out and make sure that you use transparent background. Background for the whole assessment, that can be, again, an image or a certain color that is associated with your brand. Just make sure that the combination of color of your background and color of your text is easy to read, that people will not have difficulties understanding what is written on the screen. And then the text option, so that goes all about fonts, which type of font, which size, which color of font you want to use for your assessment. And for fonts, we use certain groups. So you will not see pixels by default, but you will see a size of the font. And here I added for you an example of what are the different sizes for each group, starting from the extra small to extra large, and what's the corresponding size for that in pixels. Yeah. So extra options that are available here as well are, of course, buttons and extra design elements. So it's always nice to add a progress bar. So that will be a line on top of your assessment that tells you how far are you in your assessment and how many questions you have left to answer. So there are also extra settings that you can apply there, whether to show some numbers in that progress bar, or you want to show percentage of how long are you in the assessment. That's completely up to you. You can also enable a previous button, as such people can navigate between questions that they have already answered, go back and see what their response was. Or you can also remove this toggle, put it to off, and then people will not be able to go back and see their previous responses. They can only go forward. Also nice to make sure that your icon is correctly updated. So for my example, I used also my company logo and I updated it here to icon. And if you want to make your design for the assessment pixel perfect, you can always add some custom CSS to modify the way and look and feel of your assessment. Yeah. So, want to show you a little example of how I leveled up my test task. When I just joined Pointerpro, I needed to build an assessment, and I want to show you the difference in style that it can give if you apply all the features we talked about in the design option here. Yeah, I'll show you this one first. So that was the example that I first built. So you see that it's very, very straightforward. It's just simple beige color on the background, nothing interesting. Honestly, if I look back now at this assessment, I would add more colors and more life to it to make it more stand out and give more pleasant experience to take it. So when I applied all the modifications that we talked about, that's how my assessment look like now, meaning that I applied some background image, I made sure that I played a bit with the colors of my assessment. So in general, it feels more professional and more inviting for people to take this assessment. Yeah. And now to go back to some design tips and tricks. As I mentioned, it's always nice to add a progress bar. It's for better guidance and tell people where they are currently at with your assessment. You can add a previous button for better navigation purposes, so people can go backwards. And you can add custom CSS to add extra flexibility with your branding or modify the way your questionnaire looks. Okay, great. Moving forward, now is the second part of our webinar that will be mainly talking about boosting response and engagement. So this is very quite a hands-on part. So I also will be showing you the platform itself and how certain things can be set up in Pointerpro. So the first thing we will talk about is email invitations. Email invitations is the way you would distribute or share your assessment in case you know people's email in advance. So for example, you create an assessment for the company that you need to share with all the employees. You already by default have their contact information, like their email, their name, their team, for example. So that's something that's you can set up and send them a very welcome invitation to take your assessment. Yeah. So that's a practical example. I'm going to share with you now my screen to show you how it will potentially look when you set it up in Pointerpro. Just give me a second to share with you my screen. Yeah. I hope you can see my screen. So in order to find your email invitation, you would go under the tab Distribution, and then look for questionnaires with email invitations over here. In my case, I only have 2 of them. So I will now look at employee skill sets here with you together. So I'll just quickly click on it. And I see that now there was assessment invitation test template that I already used and I already set it up. If you want to create a new one, you would just go to this sorry, Pointerpro orange button, click on it and create a new email invitation. But let's already look at the one that I've created. So here are basically very standard things that you need to set up about your email invitation. You want to give it a certain title as such that it's visually appealing and it's easy to understand when and to who you send this email invitation. You assign a sender name. So in my case, it was Nata at Pointerpro. Sender address. So it was my Pointerpro email account. Here you would need to select a list of contacts that you want to send this invitation to, and basically add the subject line to your email and email body. So you see that I created very, very simple email that basically says, hello, please take this assessment, and I added a hyperlink to my assessment. Best regards, Nata. You, of course, can make this more sophisticated, use variables. So it will be hello, I don't know, Jessica, because you know their first name. And then each person in your contacts will be addressed by their name. And the whole experience also feels a bit more personal. Then you would go to when do you want to send an email. You would select a date and the time when the email should be triggered. And note that emails can be sent at the round hour So at 15, 16, 17, you cannot set up it at 15:30, for example. It always been set at top of the hour. As such, we can track and manage the amount of emails that are going through our system and not to overload it. So that's your email set. If you want to add a reminder, that's also possible to schedule it here with a button. Yeah. So that's about email invitations. And the next part that I wanted to show you also here at Pointerpro platform is email templates. So email templates, it's a different kind of email that you can send from Pointerpro platform based on the assessment that person already taken. So invitations is just to make sure that we invite them to take an assessment. However, email templates also uses any kind of content or results or scores that you have after taking the assessment, and you can send email templates after people finished their assessment. So I would go into questionnaire. I will look for my employee skill set assessment. And email templates, it's again something that is available under extra options. There are our question logics that we talked about, question group and question pool, and there is an email template. So again, very straightforward way to set it up. If you want to create a new template, you would go via orange button here. However, I already created a template that should be sent to everyone once they fill in my assessment. And there is also a way to understand it and set it up. You give it a name, you give it a subject, sender name, and email address. Pretty straightforward like before. In recipients, I add a variable here. So as I mentioned, I'm distributing this assessment to people within my company. So I already know their email address and their information like name and last name. So I uploaded them as contacts in my Pointerpro. If you have questions about uploading contacts, you can always consult our help guide. So in this case, I use contact email as a recipient because those are the people that should receive this email template. And this is the simple email that tells people like, hey, that was the score that you had from this assessment out of possible maximum score. And if you want to reach out and look at your report, here is the link. I also schedule an email after what time it should be sent. And I add some question, some logic here as well to who this email can be sent. It can be different kind of triggers here. So it can be if the answer on question 2 is yes, they give you consent about something or about marketing email or about terms and conditions. So you can trigger this email and send them additional information based on the assessment that you created. Yeah, so that was the practical part. I'm stopping my sharing here and coming back to you to my screen. Yeah, I see some questions. I'll make sure to cover those as well, Leo. I see that you were asking. So email invitations, that's something that we covered. Email templates as well, we looked at it. An important feature as well is save per question. For example, if your assessment is 20 questions or 50 or 100, and you are worried that people might stop on a certain moment with your assessment and lose all the progress, then it will be very useful for you to enable save per question. Meaning that every time person clicks next, we will save the response that they gave to the previous questions. As such, when they come back to the assessment using the same link you sent them in the email invitation, they will go back to the question where they left the assessment. So if they took question, if they answered from 1 till 12, and then suddenly someone rang the door and they needed to leave, Next time when they open their laptop and they open their assessment, they will be able to pick it up on question 13 because all the previous questions they already answered. This feature is also available under extra options that you can just put it on with a toggle. Yeah. Perhaps interesting here as well is that you can also save per question on intro screen. So intro screen is the first view that you have with the customers. So there are different toggles that are available here that you can put on or off based on the experience you want to give to your end users. And last but not the least is load previous response. So this feature is useful when people take the assessment several times and you want to pre-fill all the questions and all the answers that they gave before. So you can make a use out of this feature as well by enabling the toggle here. So the next time the person will come back to your assessment, all the previous answers that they gave to a certain question will be loaded. Yeah. Okay, I saw there was a question from Hannah. Is question logic related to scoring? And that's a very, very interesting question, Hannah, because our next webinar will be specifically about custom scoring and formulas. It will be with my colleague 𝗺𝗲𝗲. So if you want to know more specific about custom scoring, formulas, more sophisticated kind of calculations, 𝗺𝗲𝗲 is the guru for that. So I really suggest you join that webinar. But to answer your question, Hannah, question logic is in a way related to scoring because based on the logic that you create, some questions will be answered or not answered by your respondents. And as such, they will either receive a score for that question or they will not receive it. So you have to make sure that you think through how you want to group everything and how do you want to score your whole assessment. So basically, one of the examples I had with my employee skill set is only for people that are managers, I show a specific set of questions to evaluate how good of managers they are. And then for that specific question group, I assign score as such that only managers will have score for this group. So it is in a way connected to scoring indeed. Yeah. Okay, I see in the chat there are questions. Let me go up. Okay. Yes, Leo, this will be recorded, so you can review it later, and you should be able to receive the link to the recording after this session. As Chris answered, indeed, I saw a list of contacts. So basically, contacts is people or respondents that you can upload to Pointerpro and then send them invitations. So this you can either indeed, as Bruna says, create manually one by one, or you can indeed upload documents. If you have more questions about that, you can always reach out to me at Natalia, there is my email, or you can also check our help guide page. There it also explains step by step how to upload your contacts. Yeah. Okay, Nigel, good question. Will it send emails from my own domain or the Pointerpro domain? How does this work? So by default, it will be sent from Pointerpro domain. However, you can also white label your domain and in general the link and everything. So that's something that is also possible. We have a help guide about that. So if you're not yet using the white labeling option, you can always reach out to me or to support, and we can guide you through the process there. Okay, Susan, good question. Do you need to choose a contact list when setting up the email invitation? What if you want to use the same questionnaire for different contact lists over time? So you always, you need to set up a list when you create an invitation. Basically, the flow is you upload people as contacts to your Pointerpro, you group those contacts into a certain list that you want to work with, you create an invitation, and you assign a list to which you want to send this invitation. If you want to use the same questionnaire for different contact lists, that's also possible. You will just create a new email invitation and you assign it to another list, but you use exactly the same link to your assessment because there is some kind of parameter that will make sure that each person counted only once when they respond. Yeah. But if that's not clear, you can always follow up with me and we will make sure to look into detail about that. Ina is asking, can I send a reminder to people who didn't finish their assessment yet? That's an interesting one, Ina. So basically, yes, there is a way to do that. Let me quickly show you how you can do that while I have email templates open. Yeah, I'm going to share with you my screen, my tab, share. Okay, so we will be looking at this email template. Basically, the way to do that is first, I want to have a look at my questions. And I see that I have 15 questions and all my questions in my assessment should be set as mandatory. Yeah, so meaning that people cannot skip this question or miss it or leave it. So it's best if you want to have information about every person who took the assessment, it's best to set your questions as mandatory. So now my question 15 is mandatory. So for me, I will use this as a trigger. So if my question 15 answer is empty, and we know that our question is mandatory, if it is empty, it means that people never reach this question. And if they never reach the 15th question, which is mandatory, means that they dropped the assessment and didn't finish it. So we remember that. That's going to be our trigger. Then we go again into our extra options. We go into our templates and we just need to set up this trigger. So I want this email to be scheduled, for example, 24 hours. And there we write our trigger statement. If answer on question 15 is empty. And that will be basically the way you can send reminders, because your question 15 is mandatory, it's empty, means people never answer to it, means that they need to come back and finish their assessment. Yeah, I hope it answers your question, Ina. Back to the question list. Wait. Scan. Where are we? Is it possible to use two scales for rating? For example, you state a behavior, but also how frequently. Aidan, I'm not sure. Do you refer then to setting up those rules for if then? Because yes, you can add several statements and you can decide whether both of them should be taken into account, so then they will be joined by and, or you want to check one of them and then they will be joined by or. So either this statement or this statement then trigger this kind of activity. So yes, you can use two scales for creating the logic for your assessments. Otherwise, if that's not the question what you had in mind, make sure to send me an email. I'll be happy to help you out. Okay, is it possible to use two scales for rating? For example, you state a behavior and you want to know if they display this behavior, agree or disagree, but also want to know how frequently they display this behavior. Aidan, let me follow up with you on this one to see what specifically you have within the questionnaire. But yes, you can do the grouping, but maybe that would be more of a question logic. But let me look specifically into this use case with you together, if that's okay. And Susan, we will reach out to make sure to send you an assessment to make sure that you will be joining that one as well. Okay, I think there are other questions. No, I think we are good to go. So thank you so much, everyone who joined me today on this beautiful webinar. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me and I will be always happy to help you. Thank you, everyone, and have the great rest of your day. Bye-bye.